It's looking grim for the Stephen Miles government if early exit polls are to be believed. Courier Mail reports that an exit poll of 1,000 Queenslanders conducted by the paper and its sister publications at early voting booths in 10 seats showed a soaring primary vote for the LNP and trouble for Labor. The results are similar to a recent Newspoll. The exit poll shows that the coalition is sitting on 48.2% primary vote, Labor on 30%, Greens on 8.6% and One Nation on 7.3%. If the data is accurate, then several government ministers will lose their seats. Let's bring in Sky News contributor Prue McSween. Prue, it seems crime and cost of living are top issues in Queensland. Can Stephen Miles do anything to convince Queenslanders to give Labor another term?
I can't see it happening. I don't think people are that stupid. I mean, the man cannot even remember the name of some of his aspirants who are working with him. The guy has tried to buy votes. He's given away almost, houses to everybody. But you cannot deny that crime, the cost of living, the fact that their debt is just skyrocketing in that state. It's an inept government. It's a lazy government. It's been in power for the best part of, 30 years or so, with a slight hiccup with Campbell Newman. But when you look at the fact that so many of these seats held by Labor are just on a knife edge, there's only 5 votes in it or 12 votes in it, and all Crisafulli needs is 12 seats and he'll walk it in, and I think he'll do that with his eyes closed.
Now, Australia's private health insurers are expected to ask the Albanese government in early November for a hike in premiums. Somewhere between 5 and 6% is being reported. This is with the highest increase since 2016. It's terrible news for Labor. It's terrible news for Australians. Health insurance premiums are already a major burden on household budgets. And I do wonder, Prue, how many will cancel or reduce their cover if there is a 5 or 6% hike in their premium?
Already, Rita, so many have, at least if they haven't cancelled, they've changed it so that they're not paying as much. And when you look at it, most younger people are dropping it. It's oldies like me who really need to have that cover, who are not prepared to roll the dice. But what really annoys me is that consecutive governments have been told and have been aware that the population is ageing, that the strain on our health system was going to get worse as people do get older. And when we have people like me, I've been paying the top cover of health cover since I was 16. I don't think I've used it that often, maybe in my later life a little bit more. But you cannot afford not to have it. But when they're not, you see the gap growing. You're paying all this money and yet you're still having to top it up. So the health funds are announcing big profits. They're not willing to pay for private rooms, as we know, and there's the pinch. But if people drop out, it's going to put more pressure on the health system, and our hospitals are drowning as it is. So, there's a huge dilemma for this government.
The furor surrounding the Prime Minister's purchase of a luxury beach house continues. If Anthony Albanese thought this would be a 24-hour story, he was mistaken. He's been accused of poor political judgment after purchasing this $4.3 million home on the New South Wales Central Coast. When asked about whether he had thought about how struggling Australians would view the purchase, this was his response.
I also know what it's like to struggle. My mum lived in the one public housing that she was born in for all of her 65 years. And I know what it's like, which is why I want to help all Australians into a home.
And some people are taking the purchase as a sign that he is bracing for an election loss, already perhaps contemplating life after politics.
Are you planning to retire there?
I'm planning to be in my current job for a very long period of time.
And then he seemed to suggest that the purchase was motivated by his fiancée.
Well, Jodie and I are getting married, as is known, and I'm pleased about that. And Jodie's a coastie. She's a proud coastie.
Prue, what are your thoughts on all this?
Well, look, one could say that he's very justified in buying himself a house. As the headlines have been saying, it's just the timing, the judgment, the fact that he really doesn't have a clue about what people are going through. And he offers platitudes. Oh, yeah, we know it's the cost of living. We know that it's hard to buy a house, particularly if you're a young couple. And yet his deeds are denying all of that, because he's allowing migrants to flood through the borders, and of course that's part of our problem. And then we also have the fact that Labor has always been the party of envy, political envy, and they've done a great job of actually, I believe, failing aspirational Australians, tradies who've worked hard, small mum and dads, and of course self-funded retirees who are really at the thin end of the wedge and being penalised for the fact that they've worked hard. And here he is saying he's worked hard, and no one can deny that, it's a crappy job 24/7, but he's got so many perks and he does earn a good living. But to me, it just doesn't fit with the narrative that the Labor Party seems to want to propose. And of course, you have the Greens, 14 of them have 3 or more properties. So, they're all just hypocrites.
Well, it's the location of the house more so than anything for me. If this was in Sydney, you could look at the price and go, well, it's a uniquely expensive market, and he is the Prime Minister. If he wants to live in a $4.5 million house, good luck to him. But the fact that this is not going to be his main residence, it's going to be a beach house. I think he probably is going to lease it out for a period. That, I think, is upsetting a few people. If you could afford a $4.5 million beach house, perhaps you're not really understanding what most Australians are going through with the cost of living crisis. Now, let's look at this report released by Australian seniors. It sheds more light on the housing crisis facing young Australians in particular. It's so bad now that many are opting to live with their parents well into their 30s, Prue. And this report showed that 80% of Australian parents don't actually want their children to move back home. And 1 in 3 are giving their children an early inheritance or providing some sort of financial support to help them either buy a house or just for a bond so they can rent a place. This is impacting how people live, both people in retirement age and also young Australians.
Well, this is the thing, and what I guess the Albanese government doesn't understand, that it's impacting people in really amazing ways that really are going to cost them for the rest of their lives, whether it be dipping into their savings that they've really worked hard to build. But in this case, having your children, these boomerang children come and want to live with you, and the dynamics of the 2 generations or even 3 generations just don't work. So I can understand that, parents want to help their kids, but they don't want to sacrifice their lifestyle. I think it's a good idea if they can afford it to try and help them now, because if the kids were likely to inherit their savings and some sort of good inheritance that's going to allow them to buy a house in the future, if they can do it now, well and good. But I don't blame them for being tough on it. But what do? You don't want to see your children on the streets, and that's what a lot of them are facing.